Last year, I watched my friend Alex, brilliant, hardworking, and universally liked, get passed over for promotion again. Meanwhile, his colleague James, who contributed far less but masterfully managed perceptions, secured the position. "I don't understand," Alex told me. "I do everything right. I'm always available, always honest, always helpful." And that was precisely his problem. Alex had fallen victim to what Machiavelli identified centuries ago, the fatal gap between how we think the world should work and how it actually works. Today, I'm showing you the principles that transformed Alex from a perpetual runner-up to someone who commands respect in every room, without sacrificing his integrity. This isn't about becoming evil, it's about becoming effective. Have you ever wondered why some people succeed while others, despite their talents and good intentions, remain stuck? Think about that friend who works harder than anyone you know, yet never seems to advance. Or that colleague whose brilliant ideas are consistently overlooked. The answer lies in a fundamental misunderstanding about how the world works, a gap Machiavelli identified centuries ago that remains just as relevant today. Machiavelli's core insight was revolutionary. There exists a profound disconnect between how we believe the world should operate and how it actually does. In his controversial masterpiece, The Prince, he observed what many of us refuse to acknowledge, that those who rely solely on goodness often find themselves at the mercy of those who don't. This reality plays out in boardrooms, relationships, and social dynamics every single day. The uncomfortable truth is that good intentions and hard work alone rarely lead to success in competitive environments. A recent workplace study found that 76% of professionals who identified as team players reported feeling their contributions were undervalued compared to more assertive colleagues. This pattern repeats because we've been taught to believe in a world that rewards virtue automatically, when in reality, success often comes to those who understand the mechanics of influence and power. Our education system reinforces this misalignment. From childhood, we're told stories where the good person triumphs simply because they're good. Work hard, be kind, tell the truth, and you'll be rewarded. These narratives create a template for how we expect the world to respond to our actions. But Machiavelli noted that nice princes, statesmen, and merchants always come unstuck. The school system rarely teaches us how to navigate environments where others might not share our values or play by the same rules. This gap between expectation and reality creates genuine emotional harm. When you've helped someone who never showed gratitude or watched someone less qualified receive recognition you deserved, you experience more than momentary frustration. You feel deep resentment and a persistent sense of injustice. Over time, this builds into a psychological burden, feelings of victimhood, helplessness, and confusion about why your virtuous approach isn't yielding results. The toll this takes is substantial. People operating with this misalignment often experience constant disappointment. They become bitter, questioning if goodness is worth it. Some retreat entirely, deciding the game is rigged. Others double down on their goodness, hoping that eventually the world will recognize their virtue, a strategy that often leads to exploitation rather than success. What's the solution? Adopting pragmatic realism, seeing the world as it actually exists rather than how you wish it would be. This shift in perspective is the first step toward transformation. Machiavelli wasn't advocating for evil, he was advocating for effectiveness. He understood that to navigate the world successfully, you must first understand its true nature. Think of it as learning the actual rules of the game you've been playing all along. Imagine playing chess your entire life, but only knowing how the pawns move. Learning the complete rule set doesn't make you unethical. It makes you informed. You're simply acknowledging the reality of the board. This new framework requires seeing clearly. It means recognizing that while virtue is important, virtue alone is insufficient. The world responds to perceived power, strategic positioning, and the ability to create and leverage opportunities. Success comes to those who understand human nature, both its nobility and its flaws, and can work effectively within that reality. Understanding this fatal gap is the key to moving from victim to player in the game of life. When you recognize the disconnect between idealism and reality, you no longer need to feel confused or betrayed when the world doesn't respond as expected. Instead, you can make conscious choices about how to navigate situations effectively while maintaining your core values. Now that we understand this fundamental problem, let's explore our first principle for bridging this gap: intelligent kindness. Because being kind doesn't mean being naive, and protecting yourself doesn't require abandoning your humanity. What if I told you that your kindness, your greatest virtue, might actually be your greatest vulnerability? Not because kindness itself is weak, but because of how you apply it. Consider the last time you helped someone who never reciprocated, or stayed late at work repeatedly without recognition, or forgave someone who continued to hurt you. In each case, your kindness wasn't the problem, it was how you deployed it. There exists a crucial distinction between two forms of kindness that Machiavelli understood centuries ago. Naive kindness operates without conditions or questions. The person who loans money to anyone who asks, who always says yes to requests for help, who forgives endlessly without requiring changed behavior. This kindness stems from genuine virtue, but lacks discernment and boundaries. Intelligent kindness remains fundamentally compassionate while incorporating strategic thinking. It asks, who deserves my generosity? Under what conditions? What boundaries protect my well-being while allowing me to help others? When you practice unconditional kindness in environments where others don't share your values, you become vulnerable to exploitation. The coworker shifts their responsibilities to you because they know you'll never refuse. The friend borrows money without repaying, knowing you're too kind to demand it back. These people are responding rationally to the incentives you've created. By never establishing consequences, you've made taking advantage of you the logical choice. Research shows that people who give without boundaries experience a predictable trajectory. Initially, they give freely and find joy in their generosity. As they encounter people who exploit their kindness, they experience burnout and resentment. The emotional toll builds despite diminishing returns. Many withdraw completely, believing the only options are total self-sacrifice or total self-protection. Consider Michael, a marketing professional known for helping colleagues with their projects. For years, he accepted every request, often working weekends to complete both his tasks and others. His reputation became that of the office pushover rather than a valued team member. When he sought promotion, he was passed over. His managers saw him as support staff rather than leadership material. After reading Machiavelli, Michael transformed his approach. He began selectively helping on high-visibility projects, established clear boundaries, and ensured his contributions were acknowledged. Within a year, he received the promotion his talents deserved. Similarly, Dr. Elena Reyes, a respected surgeon, found herself overwhelmed by constant requests for schedule changes from colleagues. Her willingness to accommodate everyone left her with the least desirable operating times and frequent weekend shifts. After implementing intelligent kindness principles, she established clear criteria for when she would swap shifts and began requesting reciprocal favors. Her work-life balance improved, and surprisingly, her professional relationships strengthened. Machiavelli addressed this in The Prince when discussing generosity. He observed that appearing generous to everyone can damage your position. If you give indiscriminately, you eventually exhaust your resources. When this happens, your ability to help anyone, including those truly deserving, diminishes. True virtue requires sustainability. Intelligent kindness means helping colleagues while ensuring your contributions are visible. It means being there for friends while expecting reasonable reciprocity. It means forgiving mistakes but requiring changed behavior. It means saying no to requests that overextend you so you can say yes to opportunities that matter. These boundaries make your kindness sustainable and effective. The concept of reciprocity forms the foundation of lasting relationships. Anthropologists have found that every stable culture incorporates norms of balanced giving and receiving. When relationships become persistently one-sided, they rarely endure. By establishing expectations of reciprocity, you create conditions for relationships that nourish rather than deplete you. Intelligent kindness protects you from exploitation while allowing you to remain true to your values. It recognizes that being kind doesn't require being naive. You can maintain your ethical core while acknowledging that not everyone deserves unfettered access to your generosity. Think of your kindness as a valuable resource requiring thoughtful allocation. If intelligent kindness protects you from exploitation, the next tool in your arsenal is controlling how you are perceived. Your kindest actions can be misinterpreted, while strategic self-presentation can amplify your impact. Let's explore how others' views of you shape their responses, regardless of your true nature or intentions. Consider this truth. People don't respond to who you are. They respond to who they think you are. How might this insight change your approach to every interaction? That email you sent with good intentions but came across as demanding. The quiet competence you display that goes unnoticed while your more vocal colleague receives praise for lesser work. These disconnects happen because perception governs human interaction more powerfully than reality. Humans operate in a world of incomplete information. In every interaction, we see only fragments of others, their visible behaviors, words, appearances, and from these fragments, we construct beliefs about who they truly are. These mental constructions determine how we respond to others far more than actual qualities or intentions. This fundamental principle shapes every relationship you have. Last month, I watched a talented analyst present brilliant market research to executives who barely engaged with her ideas. Later that day, a colleague shared similar insights with more assertive body language and received enthusiastic support. Same content, different perception, dramatically different outcome. You've likely been told to just be yourself or to let your work speak for itself. These platitudes sound virtuous, but misunderstand human judgment. Your excellent work is always interpreted through perceptual lenses. The same presentation delivered by someone perceived as confident versus someone perceived as insecure will receive dramatically different responses because perception colors evaluation. Our brains make remarkably fast judgments based on minimal information. People form lasting impressions within seconds of meeting you, creating cognitive filters that influence how they interpret everything afterward. Someone who initially perceives you as competent will interpret your mistakes as anomalies. Someone who initially sees you as incompetent will view your successes as flukes. Think about a recent workplace situation where someone received recognition you felt you deserved. Was it truly about work quality or about visibility with decision makers? These outcomes reflect perception management, a skill some master intuitively while others never recognize its importance. Machiavelli understood this principle profoundly. In The Prince, he advised rulers to carefully cultivate their public image, knowing a leader must project strength and competence to be effective. His Renaissance wisdom remains relevant in today's corporate environments where leadership presence often determines who advances. Like a sculptor revealing the form within marble, effective professionals deliberately shape how others experience their capabilities. How might you apply this insight ethically? Start by conducting a perception audit. Ask trusted colleagues how you come across in different contexts. Their answers may surprise you. The gap between self-perception and others' views is often substantial. Notice patterns. Do you appear less confident than you feel? More intimidating than you intend? Next, identify qualities you want to be recognized for, perhaps competence, leadership, warmth, and examine whether your behaviors actually signal these qualities. If you want to be seen as confident but speak with constant qualifiers, you create a perception disconnect. If you want to be viewed as a leader but never take initiative in meetings, your behavior contradicts your desired image. Shape your signals by aligning visible behaviors with desired perception. This might mean adjusting communication style, posture, dress, or working patterns. When a colleague of mine started speaking earlier in meetings and making more direct eye contact, decision-makers began soliciting her input even on matters outside her immediate expertise. Perception management isn't about fabricating a false image. That approach fails when gaps between presentation and reality become apparent. Instead, ensure your genuine qualities are properly recognized rather than overlooked. As social creatures, we naturally present different aspects of ourselves in different contexts, each authentic but tailored to the situation. Your challenge is ensuring perceptual filters work for rather than against you. If you seem weak, people treat you as weak. If talented but perceived as insecure, your talents will be ignored. By understanding perception management principles, you shift from being passively judged to actively shaping evaluation criteria. Now that we understand perception's importance, let's examine a critical tool for maintaining it: strategic information control. How you manage what others know about you directly shapes how they perceive you. Have you noticed how the people who share everything often command the least respect? There's a hidden power in what you choose not to say. Think about someone you know who constantly shares every detail of their life, their struggles, their plans, their insecurities. Now compare them to someone who reveals information carefully, strategically. Which person do you tend to respect more? Which person seems more in control of their life? Information is currency in every social interaction. Each piece of information you share is a transaction that can either strengthen or weaken your position. This concept isn't new. Machiavelli understood it centuries ago when he advised leaders to carefully guard their thoughts and intentions. In today's world, where sharing has become almost reflexive, this ancient wisdom has become even more valuable. Our culture celebrates transparency and authenticity, encouraging us to share our thoughts, feelings, and experiences widely. Social media amplifies this tendency, creating an environment where oversharing is normalized. But this modern impulse directly contradicts what psychology tells us about human respect dynamics. Research shows that self-disclosure significantly impacts perceived status, with revealing too much personal information diminishing one's perceived power and making an individual vulnerable in social dynamics. Consider what happens when you reveal your entire strategy to a competitor. You've handed them a map to navigate around you, through you, or against you. Every vulnerability you expose becomes a potential point of manipulation. Every plan you reveal can be undermined before it begins. Machiavelli emphasized the importance of discretion and secrecy for those in positions of power, as he believed that a leader should know how to hide their true intentions. His reasoning wasn't rooted in deception for its own sake, but in the practical reality that in a world where everyone seeks an advantage, the one who reveals too much becomes vulnerable. The strategic use of silence creates a powerful effect on how others perceive and respond to you. This mystery isn't manipulative, It's protective. When people don't know everything about you, they fill in the gaps with their own projections, often attributing more power and capability to you than they might if they knew every detail. Research indicates that the one who speaks the least, explains the least, commands the most respect, because silence creates uncertainty. Uncertainty creates curiosity, and curiosity gives power. We see this principle at work in professional settings constantly. Think about how Apple maintains secrecy around its upcoming products, creating anticipation and perceived value. This strategic information control allows them to shape public opinion and maintain competitive advantage. The practical application of information control begins with awareness. Before sharing information, ask yourself 3 questions. What purpose does sharing this serve? Who benefits most from this disclosure? What potential disadvantages might come from sharing this? This simple filter can transform your communication from reactive to strategic. Certain categories of information deserve particular protection: your long-term plans and ambitions, your weaknesses and insecurities, your conflicts and disagreements with others, and your victories. In negotiations, skilled practitioners understand that information is power. The person who reveals their bottom line immediately loses advantage, while the person who carefully controls their disclosures maintains leverage throughout the process. This doesn't mean becoming secretive in all your interactions. The balance between transparency and strategic control varies by context. With intimate partners and close friends, greater openness builds trust. With colleagues, more careful information management protects your interests. With competitors, tight information control becomes essential. The ethical application means being truthful in what you choose to share, while exercising judgment about what needs to be shared. By controlling information about your deepest doubts, your complete strategy, and your emotional triggers, you maintain the ability to operate from a position of strength rather than vulnerability. Beyond the words you speak, how and when you make yourself available also communicates volumes about your value. As we'll explore next, strategic distance complements information control by helping you manage not just what others know about you, but how accessible you are to them. How might controlling your presence enhance the power of your controlled information? What happens when something becomes too available? Its value drops. Could the same principle apply to you and your presence? When a product floods the market, its price falls. When a rare book becomes mass-produced, collectors lose interest. This fundamental economic principle, scarcity creates value, extends far beyond material goods and directly into your social and professional relationships. The scarcity principle operates constantly in human psychology. We instinctively value what is rare and difficult to obtain. Think about the last time you eagerly pursued something precisely because it seemed just beyond your reach. A job opportunity with limited openings, an exclusive event, or someone's attention that wasn't freely given. This psychological response is wired into how we assign value to our experiences and relationships. I learned this lesson firsthand when I made myself available to everyone at all hours in a previous job. Initially, I thought my constant accessibility demonstrated dedication. Over time, I noticed colleagues interrupted me without hesitation, my input carried less weight in meetings, and my boss assigned me low-priority tasks. When I finally established boundaries, the respect for my time and contributions visibly increased. Just as rare collectibles hold value, your selective presence makes your contributions unforgettable. Many of us operate under the assumption that constant availability makes us more valuable to others. We believe that always responding immediately to messages, accepting every invitation, and being perpetually on call demonstrates our dedication. Yet this approach often produces the opposite effect. The person who is always available typically receives the least respect and consideration. Consider your own experiences with people who make themselves constantly available. Do you value their time as highly as those who carefully guard their accessibility? When someone responds instantly to your every request, do you simply come to expect it? This pattern appears consistently across work environments, friendships, and romantic relationships. The fear of disappearing concerns many, but those who are always present often fade into the background. Being perpetually available creates two significant problems. First, it signals that your time isn't valuable, that you have no competing priorities. Second, it creates expectations that become increasingly difficult to maintain. Once you've established yourself as the person who's always there, any boundary you attempt to set later will be met with resistance. Machiavelli recognized this dynamic centuries ago. He advised leaders to carefully manage their accessibility, understanding that excessive familiarity destroys respect. When you're always within reach, your presence loses its impact and your voice loses its weight. Strategic unavailability doesn't mean becoming unreliable. It means thoughtfully managing your accessibility to enhance your impact when you do engage. People who have real impact show up when it matters most. In business negotiations, the consultant with limited availability often commands higher fees than equally qualified peers who can start immediately. The job candidate with multiple options receives better offers than the one who seems desperately available. Leaders who understand this principle maintain a certain distance that enhances their effectiveness. This strategic distance makes their interventions more meaningful when they occur. How might you apply this principle effectively? Start by establishing reasonable response time frames rather than reacting immediately to every request. Create dedicated times for different activities rather than being perpetually on call. Learn to say, "I'll need to check my schedule," instead of automatically saying yes. When you do make yourself available, be fully present. The psychology behind why we value scarcity connects to our perception of worth. By applying this principle ethically, you're aligning yourself with fundamental human psychology. Becoming less available can increase your perceived value and the respect you receive. When your presence becomes more selective, each appearance carries greater weight. This isn't about playing games. It's about respecting your own time enough that others learn to respect it too. While managing your external presence is crucial, your internal state is equally important. How you respond emotionally to challenges determines whether you control situations or are controlled by them. Imagine someone says something that cuts you to the core. You feel anger rising. In that moment, who truly holds the power? You or the person who can so easily provoke you? This question reveals perhaps the most significant vulnerability in human interaction: our emotional reactivity. When someone can provoke an emotional response from you, whether anger, defensiveness, or insecurity, they gain a powerful advantage. They've discovered your psychological trigger points, enabling them to manipulate your behavior. Consider the last time someone made you lose your composure. Did you make good decisions? Did you represent yourself effectively? Or did you act in ways you later regretted? Emotional reactivity makes you predictable. When others can anticipate your responses, they can strategically plan around them or deliberately trigger them for their purposes. This undermines your effectiveness and often leads to self-sabotage. The negotiator who loses their temper inevitably concedes advantage. The employee who becomes visibly defensive when criticized signals weakness. The friend who dramatically responds to provocations becomes a target for manipulation. When emotions override reason, you become susceptible to making decisions against your long-term interests. Think about negotiations where provocation led to unnecessary concessions, or conversations where you revealed sensitive information because someone triggered your emotions. These reactive moments typically produce outcomes you wouldn't have chosen in a calmer state. By provoking specific reactions, others can distract you from important issues, rush you into hasty decisions, or extract information you wouldn't otherwise share. This manipulation occurs in personal relationships, workplace dynamics, and business negotiations. The person who maintains emotional control retains decision-making power. The reactive person surrenders that power. Machiavelli emphasized that emotional discipline fundamentally relates to maintaining power. He suggested that a leader must act with coldness and calculation to avoid becoming controlled by feelings. This doesn't mean suppressing emotions, but rather ensuring they serve your purposes rather than undermining them. Machiavelli recognized that those controlled by their emotions become controlled by others. Consider former Secretary of State James Baker, renowned for his negotiating prowess during complex international treaties. During the 1990-91 Gulf War diplomacy, his counterparts often attempted to provoke emotional responses to gain advantage. Baker's legendary composure, maintaining an even tone and neutral expression regardless of provocations, allowed him to secure favorable terms while others lost control. His emotional discipline became a signature advantage in high-stakes diplomatic situations. Developing emotional regulation means creating space between stimulus and response, a pause where you choose your reaction rather than having it dictated by immediate emotions. Mindfulness practices help you observe your emotions without judgment. Cognitive reappraisal involves reframing situations to change your emotional response. Simple techniques like controlled breathing can interrupt emotional reactivity. Identifying your specific emotional triggers in advance is particularly effective. When you recognize the words, topics, or situations that reliably provoke you, you can prepare measured responses rather than reacting spontaneously. This preparation transforms vulnerabilities into strengths, as others expecting an emotional reaction encounter composed thoughtfulness instead. The goal isn't eliminating emotions, but managing them effectively. Express emotions when doing so serves your purposes, and maintain composure when reactivity would undermine them. This selective expressiveness creates authenticity without vulnerability, allowing genuine human connection while avoiding exploitation. Every time you maintain composure despite attempts to provoke you, you demonstrate a sovereignty that commands respect and preserves your influence. You signal that your decisions emerge from deliberate choice rather than emotional manipulation. Yet mastering emotional control is merely the foundation for a more powerful capability. While emotional discipline protects you from manipulation in immediate interactions, true transformation requires developing strategic patience, the ability to observe patterns over time, calculate optimal moments for action, and wait for circumstances to align in your favor. This patience transforms reactive individuals into strategic forces that others cannot easily predict or control. Let's explore how patience, perhaps the most underrated form of power, can fundamentally alter your relationship with time itself. What if the real secret to winning isn't playing the game better than everyone else, but playing an entirely different game altogether? While most people focus on following established rules more effectively, the truly successful often operate outside conventional patterns entirely. They change the nature of the game itself. This transformation from rule follower to rule redefiner marks the difference between those who achieve modest success and those who create extraordinary outcomes. Becoming an anomaly requires questioning the underlying assumptions that most people never examine. Imagine a chessboard where everyone follows predetermined moves, pawns advancing slowly, knights making L-shaped jumps, while the true maverick reshapes the board itself. This is the difference between those trapped in systems and those who transcend them. Consider the systems you participate in daily: your workplace, your social circles, your financial decisions. In each case, an unspoken rule book exists that most follow without question. The person who never negotiates a salary, the professional waiting to be noticed, the individual saving conventionally while others build assets. Predictability makes you vulnerable. When you follow expected patterns, you become easy to anticipate and manipulate. Marketing systems target predictable consumer behaviors, workplace systems reward visible efforts over actual value creation, and social systems exploit those prioritizing others' needs above their own. These systems don't target unpredictable individuals operating outside conventional patterns. They target behaviors that can be reliably predicted and influenced. Machiavelli understood this centuries ago. He advised leaders to embody both a lion and a fox, combining strength with cunning, recognizing traps while imposing respect when necessary. This duality allows navigation through complex environments by adapting approaches rather than following predictable patterns. He emphasized balancing courage, intelligence, audacity, and self-control as essential for achieving goals in environments where others might not share your values. History proves this insight's effectiveness. Steve Jobs rejected conventional product development by focusing on what consumers didn't yet know they wanted, rather than responding to market research. Warren Buffett developed an investment philosophy often contradicting prevailing market wisdom. These individuals achieved extraordinary success by recognizing which rules served them and which needed to be strategically broken. This doesn't mean rejecting all conventions. It requires developing a framework for distinguishing between rules that serve your goals and those limiting your potential. Question each convention. Who created this rule? Who benefits from it? Does following it advance my objectives or someone else's? This analysis often reveals that many rules aren't universal truths, but systems designed to benefit specific interests, frequently not yours. Rules worth following align with fundamental principles and core values, those governing integrity, quality, and basic human respect create sustainable success regardless of context. Rules worth breaking are often societal expectations that limit effectiveness without serving genuine ethical purposes, remaining silent when you should speak, waiting for permission when you should act, or prioritizing appearances over results. Becoming an anomaly doesn't require becoming unethical. Machiavelli's core teaching wasn't about abandoning morality, but embracing effectiveness in a world that doesn't automatically reward goodness alone. The truly virtuous person balances ethics with pragmatism, refusing exploitation while maintaining integrity. You can apply Machiavellian principles ethically by focusing on effectiveness rather than exploitation, developing strategic thinking instead of naive idealism, recognizing when compassion serves mutual benefit versus making you vulnerable, and understanding that power, the ability to influence outcomes, isn't inherently corrupt but necessary for meaningful goals. The transformation from victim to player begins with this perspective shift. When operating solely within conventional patterns, you remain vulnerable to systems designed to exploit predictable behavior. When becoming an anomaly, someone whose actions cannot be easily anticipated, you gain freedom to create outcomes rather than merely accepting them. Will you continue playing by rules designed for your limitation, or will you redefine the game on your terms? Your transformation into a true player begins not with playing harder, but with playing smarter, recognizing which rules truly matter and which exist only to keep you in check. The choice is yours.